How does the NFL draft affect your rookie drafts? And what dynasty moves are lingering under the radar?
I'm Kevin Coleman at @DuBois_22.
I'm Christian Williams at CWilliamsNFL.
I'm Jeff Bell at For Whom J Bell Tolls, and this is Football Guys.
And welcome to a special edition of the Football Guys YouTube channel. Christian is joining Jeff and I as a special guest to break down the NFL draft's impact on your dynasty leagues. Be sure to subscribe and follow and like and everything there on the YouTube Football Guys channel. And we're just going to go over everything dynasty football for you guys. And we have the current Sleeper ADP. Sleeper is a fantastic resource for everybody out there. Rookie drafts are in a full swing right now, and it is the wild, wild west out there. And we want to kind of narrow it down for you guys and kind of give you guys an idea of what you could be doing in your dynasty leagues. We're going to go through the first 6 picks right now. And right now, Breece Hall is the 101. He's the running back 1. 102 is Kenneth Walker. Drake London is at the 103. Treylon Burks is at the 104. Garrett Wilson at the 105. And in rounding out the 6 is actually Jamison Williams at the 106 in Superflex leagues. And then also I don't think Superflex really matters in one quarterback this year. I think there's one quarterback going in the first round, and where that guy's going to go, it really depends. So just based on this, we're going to let our guest start off. Christian, we appreciate you joining us. Do you think Breece is the clear 101 in these formats?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me. This is going to be a fun one. Yes, the answer is yes. I think Breece Hall is for sure the clear 101. Now, I think that there's a world in which you can tier him with some of those other receivers that are at the top. But normally when you're heading into super flex drafts, you're looking at a ton of quarterbacks kind of pushing skill positions down. And I simply don't think that that's going to be the case this year, because I think people kind of know what this quarterback class is, and I think we'll get to that in the next grouping of picks. But yeah, I mean, I think Breece Hall, I think if I had to tier him, I would put him with Drake London, who's my wide receiver 1, and then also Garrett Wilson. And I think I added a couple of those other receivers in that first tier simply because it's a flavor thing, right? I think that if your team definitely needs a running back, then yes, go there. But I think you're going to see some variance in your drafts. I think you're going to see some wide receivers go 101 this year. Jeff, are you of a similar mindset? And I didn't mention Kenneth Walker. We'll get to that later, maybe. I don't know.
No, I would be surprised if you're going to see Breece Hall not be the 101 very often in rookie drafts. This was pulled, I'm going to say his name wrong, but Adiko, I believe it is, and he is a data scientist. He is one of the very smartest people that you can find on Twitter, and he pulled from about 275 live drafts to get this ADP, and he said that almost without exception, Breece Hall is currently going as the 101, and that's what I would expect to see. I think the only thing that people are really concerned about is they don't really know what to do with Michael Carter, and we haven't seen. So I just pulled some information to do a short video for Football Guys, and since 2000, 74 running backs have gone over 600 yards as a rookie and at least 4 touchdowns, and there's only been 4 situations where when that's happened, a team has used a first or second round pick to replace them, and it was Jeremy Hill with Gio Bernard, and he was a clear early down compliment. It was the Trey Mason, Todd Gurley situation. It was last year with Travis Etienne and James Robinson. Obviously, Etienne's injury did not allow us to see what would happen there. And now it's this situation. And I think a lot of people are concerned that Breece Hall won't get that passing down work because Michael Carter, that's his skill set, his strength. But in college, Breece Hall outproduced Michael Carter in the passing game, Michael Carter's college numbers. And so I think maybe you might have concerns on Breece Hall picking up blitzes, those type of things, but he's got to be the clear number 1 in Superflex leagues, I believe. But I agree that those wide receivers you mentioned, depending on how team build, and one thing that I think needs to be realized, if you're a team that is earned the 101 and you're in a rebuilding situation, you need to be looking probably at moving that pick, because while Breece Hall is going to add a lot of value to your roster, the window of your contention and usability of Breece Hall might not match up. And so if you're able to move back and get really a king's ransom and still walk out with a Garrett Wilson or with a Drake London, one of those guys that can be that cornerstone piece for you out of your rookie draft, we talk about all the time, add 23 first-round picks, and that's a great way to go.
But don't go outside the 106. There's a big drop off outside that. So like I would try to keep myself at that 106. And to your point about Michael Carter, and then we'll be done with this because I can't do Michael Carter truthers anymore. Everybody points to the targets. So 55 targets. They talked about, oh, he looks so good. He only had 9 targets the last 4 games of the year, and that went down. His volume went down as well. He had 1 good game against Jacksonville, but hey, spoiler alert, Jacksonville was not very good last year, especially that defense. And after that, against those other tougher teams, he saw his targets go down. He does not worry me. It is going to be a 70-30 split, in my opinion. And they don't go up to get Breece Hall. If they saw Michael Carter all year, there's no reason why they would go up to get him if they're like, oh, yeah, he's a serviceable back. No, Hall is their guy.
Well, and I think that's the thing that people are missing. The Jets definitely felt a certain way, and they felt that they needed to go up and get a running back of Breece Hall's caliber. And that's nothing against Michael Carter, but he's a round 4 sophomore running back that got injured and had workhorse ability concerns heading into the year. So I think that they know that that's kind of the outlook for Michael Carter. And he can be an awesome, Nyheim Hines to Breece Hall's Jonathan Taylor. And I think that that's kind of what his outlook should be moving forward. He could still be a nice, relevant fantasy piece, but to your point, those last 4 games, that's when Zach Wilson started to come back. And Zach Wilson isn't a guy that likes to hit his check down. We know that for sure. So I think Breece Hall is definitely the valuable guy there.
All right.
One more point too, quickly on that. Robert Saleh was in Seattle with Marshawn Lynch. And so I think that was probably a driving force in this pick. So, and that's, I think, a consideration too, projecting this backfield.
Yeah, and I just looked. The 101's going for the 106 and a 23 first. If you can do that, if you can navigate your leagues and grab a first and a 106 and move back, I'm all for that. And in a Jerry Jeudy and a 23 first. Those are the type of deals that you can make, and I think that provides you value. Speaking of value, look at that segue. It's like I'm a professional. How do you value Kenneth Walker here, Christian? What do you think about him getting to Seattle? I think that there's a lot of guys out there that think he's running back 1, and then there's some that have him a little lower. I tend to be on the lower side, not wearing running back 1 status. What do you think?
I'm upset you kicked it to me first, but so Kenneth Walker is my 112 right now, and he's going much higher than that. So I've kind of come to terms with the fact that I won't have very much Kenneth Walker. And the reason for that, when we think of Seattle running backs of the most recent past, that is Seattle led by Russell Wilson. That is an offense that is explosive, that really likes to run the ball. Yes, absolutely. And that's still going to be the case because Pete Carroll is still there. But are we really putting a lot of stock into Drew Lock and Geno Smith to lead this offense downfields and then give touchdown opportunities? Because when I look at Kenneth Walker, there was concerns in his receiving profile. And there's a reason that Breece was in his own tier for me. And then Kenneth Walker was he ended up falling in his own tier as well. But to me, so last year, Javonte Williams was a top 3 to 4 rookie pick. And I think that was on the back of, well, he has the receiving profile. He has good pass blocking. Kenneth Walker really doesn't have all of that. And the offense is definitely taking a step backward. You add in the fact that there are mixed reports about Chris Carson. I don't think he's toast. I think he's working to come back. He's there. Rashad Penny is there. I know that Penny's back on a 1-year deal, and Carson is also, I believe, a free agent after 2022. But I think what you're going to see is panic and depreciating value if you're drafting Kenneth Walker in your top 3 to 4 picks, because I don't know that he's given the keys immediately, especially when we've kind of seen that they don't love giving the keys over right away. They did with Chris Carson when he was a rookie, and that was kind of out of necessity with the Penny injury. So I'm just a little more cautious with him and what he can be for fantasy. I think he's a fantastic NFL running back, and I think that when this offense maybe adds a 2023 quarterback, then maybe I'll feel differently. But with them being so uncertain in their future, I'm a little more cautious. Jeff, I know you and I have differing opinions here.
Yeah, I'm higher on him. I see the additions of Charles Cross, and they made other offensive line additions in the draft. I think that this team definitely wants to play a certain way. They want to run the ball. They still have DK Metcalf there. They still have Tyler Lockett there. And, Baker Mayfield is hanging out there as well. And if they were to bring in Baker Mayfield, all of a sudden, yes, Russell Wilson's gone, but the offensive line upgrade, and we know how Baker Mayfield wants to play. You want to put him in a more conservative offense, which is what Pete Carroll, I think, even when he had Russell Wilson, that's kind of what he envisioned as his ideal offense. And so I hear you on concerns about Rashard Penny being there, but the reality is we need to look at Rashard Penny and say over the entire career, we've gotten a month of good play out of him for fantasy football purposes. And so that is where I struggle there. I agree that I believe that Chris Carson will play football again, and that's going to be such a powerful and uplifting story for that team. He's going to get opportunity, but ultimately I look at it and I just believe Kenneth Walker is a difference maker on another level between those two talents where they are at in their respective careers. And that's even before you touch the injury concerns on both of those. I think the other thing that needs to be considered is positional value, because you can look, in this, you go a full 10 picks before you want to take a running back again. And we talk about the importance of, getting your wide receivers early and then using those later picks on running backs is a proven fantasy dynasty success rate. But again, it's a question because a lot of people, especially those early picks, they're sitting there with holes in their running back. They're worried about filling those holes right now. And this opens up another opportunity where if you have somebody in your league thinking that way, because I think we're all probably on the same page right now, you should be worrying about value acquisition, adding good players to your roster, not worrying about what your lineup is going to look like week one. But you're going to have people in your league that are worried about that. And so you can find those people. And especially if you're able to drop back a couple picks, pick up more value, get somebody that's desperate to get Kenneth Walker into one of their starting running back positions because they want to take a snapshot of their lineup and post it to Twitter and look all good and all that. So I think that's one of those things that really pushes him up in value is just the lack of other options at the running back position that you're going to take immediately, and the big chunk of wide receivers that we should talk about next. But Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I had a question for Christian because we had a comment on here too. What if Seattle gets Baker? Do you move him up? Baker's your guy, Christian.
Baker is my guy. Baker is my guy, but the difference between Baker and Drew Lock within that offense, to me, I'm also a Drew Lock guy, and you know that, but the difference isn't vast enough. Now, I think Baker elevates that offense? I do. Yeah. I also saw, some people think that the offensive line is elite now. I think it's good, but you've got two rookie tackles. So we need to maybe temper expectations there. But yeah, I mean, I think I would feel a little less cautious, I guess. But man, is Baker throwing to running backs? Not really. He's really not, unless that's how they scheme it up. And, I guess we'll see. I hope we'll see. I want to see Baker there.
I agree. I think for me, I'm right in the middle of both of you. I think he's at the 104, 105. And if you can grab him, that's great. If he's at the 103, 104, you need a running back. I don't think it's a terrible pick. I would just temper expectations from a dynasty perspective for the first year. I would say, hey, it'd be kind of like a Javonte situation where, hey, maybe he has some games, and if there's some injuries, he can pop up, and then he's a running back one. But then next year, I'd be all aboard. Like, I think next year, once they get that quarterback there, so you just know that going in with what your team makeup is, and I think you have to make those decisions based on what your team looks like. If you're expecting a Breece Hall type production profile, I don't think you're going to get that. I see that. I see some people talking about Kenneth Walker being 101. I think that's a grave mistake in rookie drafts. I think Breece Hall is the clear 101. Kenneth Walker has it could be 101 caliber with some caveats. Offensive line is they really draft him for pass blocking. The run blocking, I think, is going to take some time. Then you have the quarterback situation. Then you have these different weapons there. What's that offense look like? So I think it just got to temper expectations a little bit. Let's go to the wide receivers, though, because that's an interesting with where everybody is at. So the draft effect on the wide receiver one tier. So we looked at these landing spots. We talked all of the time in Dynasty, talent over landing spots. And then we get to the draft and people draft landing spots. And we see it. Do these landing spots shift your rankings, Christian, when they came?
No, not at all. No. Not a single bit, to the point that there's a guy that doesn't make this tier that I have ranked. Well, I guess neither guy made this first tier or this first group of players, but I just tweeted out earlier. I drafted Sky Moore ahead of Chris Olave. I had Sky Moore as my wide receiver 5 pre-draft, and I had Chris Olave my wide receiver 6. The draft capital is different. The situation is kind of interesting for each of them, but I don't tend to, I guess, overcorrect unless it's egregious, right? So if I had ranked Justin Ross in my top 5 wide receivers, I'm not going to draft him that way now that he's, not playing in the NFL at this point. But especially at the top tier, when no one really went to a bad situation, I guess you can argue that the top tier wide receiver that went to an iffy situation would be Garrett Wilson, simply because of the threat of Elijah Moore and Corey Davis, and Jeremy Rucker and Breece Hall. They added a lot of pieces and had some already. But outside of that, I'm feeling pretty comfortable that, the rankings that I put out pre-draft were kind of justified by just being drafted in the first three rounds. So no, I mean, Drake London's still tier 1. You'd love to see it.
Jeff, what do you think? Because I know where I'm at. Wilson's my 101. I'm taking him at 101. I just got him at the 105 in the draft. Like, I'm not scared off of the Jets thing because I think he's the most talented receiver in the class. I know London for some of you. I think for definitely Christian, I think, hey, that's the most talented guy. That's where I'm going. How about you, Jeff?
I'm same place. I'm Garrett Wilson 1. I'm Drake London 2. I'm Jamison Williams 3, and I've got Treylon Burks at my 5. And I'm not worried about the Jets landing spot for Wilson either. I think that they want to throw the ball. They were in the top half of the NFL in throwing last year with a rookie quarterback and with Mike White playing a little bit. And we know that Zach Wilson's going to lock onto his target. And so I don't really understand the concerns on landing spot there. I don't know if it's just that people are in love with Elijah Moore, but I think that this is going to slide Elijah Moore kind of into a more natural slot role. Yes. And it's going to allow Garrett Wilson to serve as the number 1 wide receiver in that offense. And so I don't have any concerns on him landing with the Jets and still being my wide receiver 1. I'm not moving off there. And we can talk about other things within this and favorites or least favorites, but I'm sitting there right now.
No, I think Wilson, when you're looking at that, I said the exact same thing earlier on another show. Elijah is going to get naturally into a slot position now, and Wilson is that guy. Like, Wilson is going to be your wide receiver 1 on that roster, and he's going to lead that team in targets. It would not shock me to see that be the case. I know that we do have a least favorite landing spot. So, Jeff, who is your least favorite landing spot?
Yeah, out of this group, I don't like Treylon Burks' landing spot at all. I'll be honest with you. I think that what is happening, you're seeing a lot of people that are comparing him physically to A.J. Brown and putting him in that A.J. Brown role and just seeing, okay, well, the Titans think he's like A.J. Brown, and I think he's kind of like A.J. Brown, so let's go to the moon with Treylon Burks. But I think that puts a lot of pressure on Treylon Burks to be in that situation. You wanted to kind of see him serve in a secondary role. Team could kind of create just for him, and you worry about especially a heavy press man cornerback getting up on him, serving. He's going to be in a division with I'm blanking on who I wanted to say, but I'm sure good cornerbacks. Golly. Anyways, but I wanted to say too, we've been complaining for the last couple of years about AJ Brown and about seeing his passing volume, not where you want it with an alpha wide receiver. And so when Treylon Burks get drafted into that situation, they add Robert Woods, they take Phillips later. And so, that creates some major questions on Treylon Burks, even succeeding in that role, much less meeting the volume as an elite fantasy producer and the production that you're really hoping to see.
Go ahead, Christian.
So I was just going to say, so the Kyle Phillips pick is a little more impactful than I think than we've kind of been leading everyone to believe. I think that picking Kyle Phillips means that you want to use Kyle Phillips in the slot. And that's exactly where Treylon Burks needs to be used if you want to get his full potential. It's kind of what they did with A.J. Brown when he first came into the league, because he had similar issues. He had separation issues, but he at least had the explosiveness. I love Treylon Burks. He was my wide receiver 4 when all was said and done, and he still is. I think that he can get better. He's terrifying when he has the ball in his hands. He's a really, really good yak guy. But in knowing that quarterback situation is fluid enough that they would take a shot on Malik Willis in the 3rd round, which I'm sure we will get to here soon. I don't feel super comfortable with his year 1 fantasy outlook, which means, again, depreciating value. You may lose a little bit of value on him if he has a rough rookie year.
Yeah, and the way I look at the landing spots, Are they the wide receiver one? Drake London, wide receiver one. I know Pitts is there, but it's a little bit different of a hybrid situation, unicorn situation there. Garrett Wilson, he's the wide receiver one on that roster. Jamison Williams is the wide receiver one on that roster. Now, you might think Amon-Ra St. Brown is good. That's good for you. You might think DJ Chark is good. That's okay. He is okay. Hawkinson is overrated, I think, as a fantasy aspect. I like Hawkinson. Swift, he's okay. He'll get some targets. The biggest question is Goff. But in Dynasty, they're going to get rid of Goff at some point. At some point, Jared Goff cannot be an NFL starting quarterback. So now Jameson Williams' value is going to go up. And we're like what we saw with Rashad Bateman, right? Bateman now is the wide receiver one on that roster when he wasn't because they traded Brown. So if I'm looking at those spots, I'm looking, hey, are they the wide receiver one? Those guys are. Burks, I have question marks about. I know Woods has come back of his injury. Tannehill is did not have a good year last year, even though people want to say he did. I think there's some question marks about that scheme. Derrick Henry coming back. So those are the reasons why with Burks, that's the question mark. But when you look at those other guys, talent wins out. Those guys are the most talented wide receivers on that roster. All right, let's go to quarterbacks because we have very little to talk about. But let's talk about Kenny Pickett because Kenny Pickett is basically the only quarterback right now getting drafted in the first round. He has an ADP QB1 is about 107-ish, 106, depending on your league. I tweeted out recently 108 to 112 is where I'd be comfortable if I needed a quarterback to take him. He's gone as high as 102 in leagues. So a lot of fluctuation here. And so how do we address his potential ceiling versus his draft capital concerns with the other quarterbacks? So where are you willing to take him, Christian?
I'm not. So I listened to this really fantastic analyst. His name's Kevin Coleman, and he put him on his do not draft list a while ago. And,
I did.
It got me thinking. And I wouldn't take Kenny Pickett until the second round. I just value the skill positions that much more. And I know it's super flex. And I know we try to, look at that as, well, quarterbacks retain value no matter what happens. They do until they don't. And while I think that he at least has a little more leeway, and the Steelers seem to be in love with him. He may start week one and maybe that's a good thing, but maybe that's also a bad thing. Maybe you're looking at just a slow decline in value. And ultimately, I'd rather take a shot on some of those tier 2 wide receivers or, even the tier 2 running backs to a lesser extent, I guess. But I really don't have interest in rostering Kenny Pickett for fantasy football. And, that's not a knock on the player. Maybe he's a really good NFL quarterback, but it's really important to separate being a good NFL quarterback with being a good fantasy quarterback. I know Kenny Pickett's athletic, but he's not offering you Konami code ability at all. So I think you're hopeful that he gets you 200 rushing yards in a year. And that's just not, there are so many other viable options. To the point, I'm not going to say the point yet. Actually, I'm sorry. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, you forget about the fake slide. He had a whole rule change after him. He's got Konami ability. Let's go. Come on. He's got a little bit in there. All right, Jeff, go ahead. Sorry.
I think really what you're looking at with Kenny Pickett is a bet on getting a 23 first for him from a quarterback desperate team is really kind of the play there. And once you're kind of out of that elite tier, out of that top 6, if you were to grab Kenny Pickett over some of these wide receivers, it's really because, one, you've got questions about if you want to get in on these wide receivers, which I think the three of us probably feel pretty comfortable with them. And that's why we push Kenny Pickett a little bit further down our board. But what you're really playing is to take him in that position and go to that quarterback needy team in your league and say, hey, I'll give you Kenny Pickett. I'll give you a 3rd round 23 first or 23 pick. Give me a 23 first back. And that way you've got your quarterback situation solved. And, your team's going to win the championship next year. So really you're trading me the 112 and I'm trading you back to 301. You're really only moving just a little bit. Plus you're getting Kenny Pickett. And I feel like that's kind of the play on, because the reality of it is talent falls off in this first round and throughout this draft. And beyond that, if you're really quarterback desperate, you can sit and you can grab a Desmond Ridder or a Matt Corral or a Malik Willis in round 2, early round 2, even later round 2 in some situations. And, you're playing that waiting game a little bit, but you might be playing that waiting game with Kenny Pickett anyway. And really the selling point that people are buying in on is the proven track record of success with Pittsburgh, the weapons that are with Pittsburgh. I think that it's easy for people to buy in on the amount of talent that he's going to be throwing to. And I think that that's kind of where people are. There are a lot of concerns about him going in the first round, being the only quarterback to go in the first round. but we don't have a great track record of success for quarterbacks that go at pick 20 or later anyways. And so is there a huge difference between him going at 120 versus Malik Willis going mid third? Because I imagine given the contract situation and level of play, the Titans would absolutely be thrilled if Malik Willis becomes their franchise quarterback and they can move out of that Ryan Tannehill contract. And we know that if that situation happens, the ceiling is so much higher for Malik Willis to be the quarterback in your fantasy league than Kenny Pickett.
Well, let's just look at it from a value perspective. Like, that's how I look. I think we all kind of do. Like, let's say you have the top 3 pick, if you take that on Kenny Pickett, and then you're looking at the beginning of the second round, so guys going in the second round, Dotson, Spiller, some of those guys, that is not equate value for what you want from the wide receiver, running back position. So, for example, let's say I take Breece Hall, and then, hey, this second round, why don't I take a Ritter or a Willis? Because what's going to happen is if they do get into the game. So let's talk about Ritter. I think he had a good landing spot. He goes to Atlanta. He learns a little bit behind Mariota. Maybe he jumps out there mid-year and he looks good. Now you have Breece Hall and a Ritter who looks good, who looks like, hey, maybe he'll take over next year. That gives you value chips. And now you can put that value on the chopping block and say, hey, who wants it? Come get Ritter. He's going to be the QB1 next year for Atlanta, who's going to have Ridley, London, Pitts, and a running back in the vault in 23 class. And I think that's where I look at this, like the quarterback situation, the value. If I can grab one of those guys, those top half guys, and then use Ritter or even Willis as a bargaining chip later because the value is going to increase in Superflex, the quarterback market is not getting any better. Like, it's still down. Like, there's still Wentz is still out there. Matt Ryan is still out there. There's guys. Baker might start. Jimmy might start. You have guys out there. Davis Mills, I know everybody loves the kid, but he's still not a proven asset. Next year's class has 2 top guys, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. There's a lot of tweeners next year too. There's a lot of unknowns. So I still think that those second round picks are valuable at the quarterback position just based on the value you could get back later.
Yep. And ultimately that's where I was going is I would rather roster those guys simply because of the perceived value. Plus, I think the players might also be better down the road. You know, the ceiling is so much higher. So, and someone asked me, you know, what happens if Ritter takes over, but Atlanta still heads for a top 3 pick? Then you can flip him. You can flip him and get an additional 2023 pick. And maybe you can go out and you can get yourself a CJ Stroud because he would definitely start before Desmond Ritter, no matter what, I think. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the second half of this first round then. Let's go through here. So after Kenny Pickett, 107, we have Chris Olave, Christian Watson at the 108, 109, Sky Moore, Malik Willis is still getting drafted in the first round, which I think is a mistake. George Pickens, James Cook will be the 3rd running back right now off the board. And then we have Jahan Dotson and Isaiah Spiller to kind of round out that basically all the way to 202. So if we're looking at wide receivers, so how to break out among the tier, what are we looking at those tier 2 wide receivers, Jeff?
I mean, you're really kind of dividing between the landing spot, you know, draft capital, Chris Olave going in that top half of the first round, even Jahan Dotson right there at the break of the top half of the first round versus the landing spots that Christian Watson was blessed with getting the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and then Sky Moore landing with Kansas City. I mean, you couldn't have even hoped for a better landing spot than Sky Moore landing with Kansas City, plus the proven track record of George Pickens and the production out of Pittsburgh wide receivers. And so that's really what you're weighing. You're weighing that back half group that went early in the first round versus landing spot that you love on athletes that you love. And really it kind of comes down to, how much are you going to believe the talent that went early? You know, are you going to be willing to place a bet on Chris Olave and maybe Jameis Winston shows us the Jameis Winston that we came to love in fantasy, and he's bombing the ball deep to Chris Olave. They're using him all over the field to help free up Michael Thomas, or, maybe Jahan Dotson shows that talent as a top first half of the draft. But you're getting into bed there with Jameis Winston or with Carson Wentz versus are you going to wait and take that guy in that second round that is attaching to an elite quarterback? And so that's kind of where personal choice has to come in on that. And I think the real answer with even the first group, but also this group as well, is if you're playing in multiple leagues, don't be afraid to diversify, because I know last year, you get in a situation where maybe you loved Rondale Moore and you just decided that Rondale Moore was above Rashard Bateman for you. Now we see that situation has gotten a lot of clarity after this weekend and the moves that happened there. And so don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even if you decide that Sky Moore should be the top of this tier, don't be afraid to diversify if you're in multiple leagues. But if you're playing in that home league with your friends, if you're playing in just a couple, I mean, take your personal preference.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think that's some sound advice there. I said I took Sky over Olave, but I was seriously debating, maybe because they're close enough in my tier that I would. And what I try to do is I approach drafts tier based, right? So I have Olave, Sky, and I believe Dotson all in the same tier, and maybe Pickens as well. And so as I go into drafts, if I'm picking in that range, I will take that strategy and kind of use that and start to take different guys as drafts continue on. I will say of that group, Sky's still my favorite. I think attaching to a guy like Patrick Mahomes is significant, and I know they brought in some wide receivers, but and there's an argument out there that they traded back, so how much could they love Sky more? It's just playing the board. That stuff doesn't really matter. I mean, the Colts took Michael Pittman before they took Jonathan Taylor a couple years ago, and I think that we know which player is the more valuable fantasy asset at this point. So, but I think this is the sweet spot of the draft. This is your value tier where I think you're going to win with really any pick you make here.
Well, unless it's Christian Watson, but no, I think like for me, I have Olave. I love Olave. It's weird. I can't believe I just said that as a Michigan fan, but Olave, I think he found himself a good spot. But the thing about Olave, and this is the thing I was talking about earlier, what Winston are we getting? Are we getting Tampa Bay 2019 Winston? They're going to let throw and they're going to let fly? Because if that's the case, and I want all the Olave because I think that he's going to get peppered with targets. Or are we going to get the Winston we saw last year, which was the better quarterback but the worst fantasy option because they kind of brought him in a little bit and said, hey, you got to rein it in. I don't know what that offense is going to look like. New offense, Peyton's not there. So I think there's some question marks there. Kamara, I don't know what's going on with his legal troubles. So I think that's the situation. A lot of these guys have murkier situations. Sky, again, are they going to move the ball around more in that offensive scheme? Will there not be a specific guy besides Kelsey in that target with Juju and those guys there? I love Pickens. I do think he's going to take over for Claypool, but like we mentioned, it's murkier. Trubisky's out there. Is Kenny going to be there? Is he going to start? So it's really based on how you rank these guys. And that's why I wouldn't change my ranking just based on the landing spot. Cause two of these guys are going to pop off next year and be in a clear tier above the other two. And you really got to make sure you stick to your rankings.
I do want to say it does feel like out of this group, the one guy that a year from now we could be looking back and saying, why did we not buy in on this? Christian Watson is 6'4". He runs a 4.3 and he's with Aaron Rodgers, an angry Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there is a chance where, he's in that tier of like DK Metcalf or AJ Brown. And we're sitting back and a year from now, we're saying, why did we not just go with the big fast guy that's playing with Aaron Rodgers?
But there is a chance that Amari Rodgers out targets Christian Watson this year. And in a year from now, we go, wow, why did we draft Christian Watson at the 110? Like he has so many red flags. I'm just staying away. That's just my preference though.
Well, there's some crazy stat that no rookie wide receiver has gotten more than 30 something targets from Aaron Rodgers. And so when you hear that and you mix in some of the actual on-field concerns that Christian Watson has, it's a risky bet, but it may be the bet that your roster is built for. Maybe you can wait out that craziness. So.
All right. You want to go to running backs now? You're good?
Yeah. Well, real quick, if you're ahead of your league, which if you are a Football Guys subscriber, that's where we strive to have you. This is, you want to be in this tier. If you're in the front of this tier, this is another one where you're able to move back a little bit and be trying to do those moves now, depending on when your rookie draft is coming up. Like be in front of there and realize that the tier breaks that you're going to see and kind of move those little moves so that maybe you allow somebody else to take the guesswork out of it and you go ahead and take the guy that you feel comfortable within the tier. And I think that you see that NFL teams love to operate that way. And you want to do the same thing with your dynasty rosters.
Yeah. I can't talk about David Bell. So let's move on. Let's go to tier 2 running back. So let's look at the tier 2 guys, which I think is interesting. So I'll give you guys everybody the ADP and then we'll go to Christian and you tell us what you think about these guys, favorite, anything like that. James Cook is at the 112 going at the end of the first as running back 3. Isaiah Spiller still going as running back 4, even though he got that, that dreaded day 3 draft capital at 202. Rachaad White is going at 205, running back 5, and then Damian Pierce is at 206, running back 6. So that's basically, and then Zamir right at the end, running back 7. Of those guys, do you have a favorite there?
Oh, yeah, clearly Rachaad White. Rachaad White hit a lot of important fantasy metrics that correlate to fantasy production at the NFL level. I know there are concerns about his age, but he's going into a Tampa Bay offense that we know is going to stress running the football a little bit more this year. And they've kind of proved that by bringing back Leonard Fournette, but they need a pass-catching running back. That is exactly what Rachaad White offers. If Ronald Jones was able to catch half the targets that he got last year, he would have been a very good fantasy performer. And Leonard Fournette kind of offered that, but he's not good enough. And that's why they decided to spend day 2 capital, round 3 draft capital on a running back, and one that has a fantastic receiving profile. So he is a tier above all of these guys. And I actually toss him in the same tier as Kenneth Walker. So, I'm a little crazy for that. I know I value Walker a little lower, but those two guys are interchangeable simply because of the difference in receiving output, at least at the college level. Beyond that, I'm a little out on the rest of tier 2 running backs, I think, just simply because I think James Cook goes into a situation where he is going to be in a committee. I think we were hoping for Breece Hall to land in Buffalo. If that didn't happen, I don't see them having a workhorse, and I don't think James Cook is the workhorse type of back that they would look for anyway. Damien Pierce, I love the situation. I love the film. It's just, they have kind of shown that they want to have a stable of running backs. They have Marlon Mack. They signed Rex Burkhead. They have 6 other guys. And so I don't know if Pierce does win that job. So I'm a little skeptical. And then I love me some Zamir White, but I think he's a running back in waiting, kind of hoping that Josh Jacobs doesn't return. But Jeff, what are your thoughts? Do you agree there?
I want to know your thoughts about James Cook, Jeffrey. Let me hear, because he went to your Bills and he's getting drafted like the 110 and the 111 in drafts. Is that too high for you?
I'm comfortable putting him at my 3. You guys know, back in December, January, I absolutely loved James Cook, and I allowed, it was one of those things. I was hopeful to see him work with the wide receivers at the Senior Bowl. He had to leave the Senior Bowl, wasn't able to work there. Then I was hopeful to see what he would do at the Combine. I believe he got injured and he wasn't able to test at the Combine. And then he finally tested at the Pro Day. He tested fine. He had, I believe it was a 4.42 speed. I think this is a great fit for him because, as much as I wanted Breece Hall with the Buffalo Bills, I think that them taking this running back kind of says something about how they want the offense to run. And I don't think that they want to be in a situation where they're going to give a running back 25 touches a game. I think that they want to be in a situation where they can use James Cook's versatility, line him up outside as a wide receiver, bring him inside. And, a lot of what they've done this offseason has focused on getting more multiple personnel sets, bringing OJ Howard in, allowing them to run 12 personnel, running that heavy that way. But Cook is a versatile piece in that offense. And we have seen how many times the scheme and the talent around there has opened up massive holes for Devin Singletary or Zach Moss, and they just aren't the level of athlete to take advantage of that. And I believe that James Cook is. We saw that at Georgia. We saw his big play potential, and I think that he's going to be a guy that is going to be able to hit those big plays in the NFL. I know there are some current concerns about him only being 199 pounds, and sure, we would have loved to see him be 10 pounds heavier, but again, I just think that this is taking him in the second round really says something about what they believe is going to add in their offense. And so I'm fine kind of where he's landing. I agree with Christian on Rachaad White. We saw Tom Brady and the Buccaneers bring in Gio Bernard last offseason to hope to get that passing compliment. And Gio just really didn't have anything left in the tank, and he was hurt for most of the season. We saw a couple games where he flashed in that, but obviously Brady had that passing back in New England, and they kind of had to force Fournette into that role. And I don't think that they really want Fournette to serve that role. So I think that there's probably some overreaction going on here with Rachaad White, and knowing he doesn't have a clear shot at being a bell cow back or that type of situation. But again, you mentioned that 3rd round draft capital. This is a team that's committed to adding him into that passing role and use those high resources on it. Damien Pierce has to be mentioned because the lack of competition and with the Texans. My concern there is we might be in another Michael Carter situation where, one, we haven't seen him serve as a full-time bell cow. Even with Florida, they kind of worked him through a committee. And so we've never seen him in that situation. He has the physicality and the potential to serve in that role. But I feel like that's one of those that I think we should take a real lesson from Michael Carter, that unless you are seeing a guy produce at a very elite level with that day 3 capital, they can be open to being replaced. And so that's one of those that if you were to draft Damien Pierce in your draft and he takes over and he's the Texans running back, I would probably move that chip into a more stable position because we know how much talent, and we'll talk about it at the end of the show, just to give you an idea. We know how much running back talent is coming up in next year's class. And there's a guy down in Austin, Texas, that if the Texans find themselves positioned to take, he would probably be a big home run pick for them to take at the running back position.
No, I think you guys are right on this. I think Rashad being in that 205 range is the best value for a running back if you're going to go there. James is a little early for me. I'm not on Jeff's area where that 110, 111, because I still think Devin Singletary and Josh Allen's rushing ability with his touchdowns. I know they said they're going to bring that back a little bit, but we all know when they really do want to win those games, they will run Josh Allen straight into that goal line for a touchdown. And I think that we're going to limit yourselves there. In my opinion, if you're at the 105, 106, trade back into that 201, 206 range, get some extra capital, and then maybe grab one of these guys. To your point about Damien Pierce, his career high in carries is 106. That's it. That's all he's ever had at Florida. It was 106. That's his career high. So if that's his career high, what are we getting with him? Now, if you're getting Damien Pierce in the 3rd round, like I got him in the 305 today, I'm totally okay with taking a shot at Damien Pierce in the 3rd round. I think in the middle of the 2nd, you got to be careful with the guys going around him. So David Bell, John Mechie, Trey McBride is getting drafted after Damien Pierce. Those guys maybe could provide more value for your dynasty teams. I think this is where you try to reach and fill a hole that you may not need to fill right now in May for a running back that we don't know the situation is going to be. Other than that, real quick, Isaiah Spiller, are you in or out, Christian?
I mean, based on my ranking of him and what his ADP currently is, I guess I'm out. I really like the player and I do like the situation, but I'm just scared that he's Joshua Kelly all over again. You know, everyone was really excited about Joshua Kelly as well. Joshua Kelly wasn't a super good athlete, and he kind of was thrust into that, you know, he gets to be the power back. Well, the Chargers kind of showed us they don't care about that power back last year. They gave Eckler kind of a workhorse role. So to draft an RB2 that might get some goal line touches, you know, he might, yeah. We're not really sure. That highly, I'm a little out.
Okay. Jeff, you out? In?
On Isaiah Spiller.
Isaiah Spiller is going 202 right now. I feel like that's a little early.
That's early for me. I think given what, you know, I'd rather bet on Rashad White. I think that he's a better athlete, and he's going to be in that passing role. I think Spiller, there's certainly potential. The Chargers want to fill that position. They want a power back complement to Austin Eckler. And I mean, he does have the skill set to even take over as the feature back long term. But you make a great point there on the athleticism and the concerns that we saw with Joshua Kelly. And if Joshua Kelly's not able to take advantage of this offense, because he should be able to take advantage of this offense, is Isaiah Spiller enough of an athlete to do the same thing?
Okay. All right. Let's jump ahead a little bit and go to, we could do this. We got time, you know, whatever. We'll talk about process real quick, about draft process. Does this draft change anything about your process heading into it all? Like the landing spots, just everything that we kind of talked about, where you see ADP right now, or not at all, Christian?
Well, I walked into everything pre-draft and said, this is a terrible quarterback class, but the NFL is going to overdraft him. And then the NFL kind of threw us a curveball and didn't, despite the fact that they always have and they always tended to. And so now I have to question whether or not that will be the case in future drafts. Because what happened is then I was starting to do mock drafts and I was putting, you know, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis all in the 1st round, guys that I really liked. And the NFL said, no, we're good. We don't want that. And now if those were real drafts, I'm in trouble. And so what I think I might do is, you know, in the pre-draft process, kind of wait out the feel of what the quarterbacks will be. Now, the feel this year was that they would be overdrafted. No one knew that this was going to happen. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just a little skeptical moving forward. But overall, I feel pretty good about everything else that went down. Brian Robinson going on day 2, though, man. Like, I guess I'll just have to bump up the Alabama guys. That's what I'm going to do next year.
Yeah, the guys that look like NFL running backs from Alabama, we probably need to value them. I think that I value relative athletic score pretty heavily on when I do these pre-draft ranks, and I think that played out pretty well. Speed kills, we know it, and speed's going to get drafted. And that does raise questions on the ability to put up fantasy points. We see a guy like Tyreek Thornton going to the Patriots 50th overall in the middle of day 2, early day 2. And that raises some questions on like what is his fantasy ceiling there? Like, yes, he got drafted early, and I almost wonder if those speed guys have turned into forever. It used to be the big guys would get moved up draft board, and we got to get these 6'4" guys, and then you'd see all these busts come out of them. Now it feels like these speed guys are getting moved up, and you're going to see the busts come out of them. But again, if you're kind of valuing draft capital landing spot in your analysis, and a team that is going to be willing to give these guys a role, you can't overvalue speed. And one of the big things, I think Christian makes a fantastic point there with the quarterbacks. And I don't know. The reality of it is, if Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, or Matt Corral hit, you're going to see the quarterbacks pushed right back up again. If they all fail, then I think you're going to see the teams that, like, we don't have this guy as a first-round talent, and we don't have to reach on him because of what we saw play out. And you're really going to have like break one way or the other. But we know that if Malik Willis hits or Desmond Ridder hits, you're going to have all over again NFL GMs and evaluators are going to be going for those toolsy guys, those athletic guys that can serve that offensive role.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have it pretty locked down for running backs, wide receivers. We know what they want, and we've seen that. I think the quarterback position is the biggest one, and we know what they want in tight ends too. They want athletic tight ends that are going to run that 4.6 and hit that RAS score, and that's where they're going to go. Look at Dulcich, look at all these guys that kind of went, and we know that. All right, let's wrap this up with the draft sleepers, and we'll just talk about one guy. You got to give us one guy here, Christian. I'll let you go first since you're the guest. You're going to take mine. I'll be very upset, but go ahead.
Well, how deep do you want?
Are we looking at deep? We go deep,
man.
All right. So if we're going deep sleeper, then man, I guess this is risky. So Ty Chandler is actually the deepest sleeper I feel pretty comfortable drafting in the 4th round. So the Minnesota backfield, he went to Minnesota. He's a running back from North Carolina. Really talented dude. He's got good contact balance. He's quick. He tested well athletically, and he offers special teams value. I know they have Wong Wu that they drafted last year, but he's really not a running back. I think he's got a lot of work to do. He's just an athlete that they like having on their team. Alexander Madison is almost done. His contract is up after this year, and he has battled some injuries. This is just a guy that I think could walk into a pretty solid RB2 role for Minnesota, especially with how often Dalvin Cook has tended to get injured as well. So in the 4th round, that's kind of, I said this a few months ago, and I feel even better about it now because of the landing spot. So Ty Chandler's the guy.
All right, Jeff, what do you got?
Isaiah Pacheco, I believe, is that how it's said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the Chiefs. He was 4.37 speed. I believe he was the fastest running back at the combine, or one of the fastest running backs at the combine. I just think he's got something that they don't have in that room. And I think that I'm placing the bet now that he is my Elijah Mitchell in this class, where he can break up, he can climb to the top of that depth chart. I know Christian is a Ronald Jones truther, and so I'm going right for his heart there. But it's just adding a different element to that offense. And this guy's a natural runner. We saw him run well at Rutgers. That was not a good situation for him in the slightest. And so him landing with Kansas City, that athleticism, a guy that you can grab in your 4th round, I think that's a very easy bet to make. And I'm going to be leaving every draft with him that I can.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Keontae Ingram. Man, he went to Arizona. I know he got late day draft, capital, but I think, with Eno being there, Connor's there. I mean, he has a chance. I think like what Jeff talked about with speed. I know Ingram struggles there, but Ingram is the second best pass catching back in this class. Like, I've always had him ranked very high up there. Him and Rashad, those two guys are neck and neck in this area. If he can provide that second, just, hey, give you targets, maybe have that role. Maybe Connor. Hey, Connor got healthy last year, but then he got hurt. We've seen Connor get hurt before. I mean, there is an opportunity for Ingram to step in and actually provide you some volume in 2022, which was what you're looking at with these late round running backs. Volume and can they produce? And that's who I thought you were going to steal. And I am also a Rojo truther, so you came at me too, Jeff. I would like you to know that. All right, let's go quick here for the dynasty fallout. So let's talk about just things around the league that we've seen. Seattle's quarterback plan. We've talked about it a little bit. So we had Drew Lock versus Geno Smith, the battle of the century. That is going to be the best, fall camp battle, or if Baker Mayfield get there. So if you had to pick, Christian, who do you think it's going to be?
Baker. I think they're going to be the last team in on Baker.
Jeff, same thing.
I think it's going to be Baker, but you've got to have, if I would not go out and get Drew Lock. Now, Geno Smith is a guy that you might be on your dynasty waivers, and I don't think that people are dialed in to the potential that he might be the guy there. But yeah, again, they didn't draft any quarterback, and I do think that ultimately they're going to get Baker.
Can I call you out? I saw your Geno Smith tweet today. Did you watch him play football last year?
I did. He put up some fantasy points, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Pete Carroll seems to like him. I don't know. He's free. He's free, and you can add him in Superflex leagues. And I don't. Pete Carroll assessing quarterback position. I don't know.
He's not free. He's on my roster. But no, I would say I think it's going to be Baker. But Drew, I think Drew still has a shot. I think they like Drew Lock. I really think they like Drew Lock. And I think that they think that maybe he can come out there and at least have a competitive team-ish. Like, hey, they maybe compete. But I do think it's got to be Baker, right? Or Baker's just going to be making commercials outside Cleveland Stadium while he's not playing. Ryan Tannehill. Is the clock ticking finally on Ryan Tannehill? Christian, what do you think?
Yeah, that clock started midway through last season, I think. And even though they didn't spend high capital on a quarterback, they still went out and got what a lot of people thought was the best one based on the tools. So I think this was always part of the plan. And I think that they do have an out after 2022. Heading into 2023, I think they could exercise that if he doesn't have a bounce back year.
Yeah, Christian mentioned it there, that out of that contract, they're able to get out of nearly $100 million. And I think that they would love for Malik Willis to take over and be the quarterback on that cheap contract. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, is he that athletic quarterback that we've seen in the past? I think that's an open question. And they've built their offense already around an athletic quarterback that has some accuracy concerns, and they want to run the ball. So it's really tailor-made for Malik Willis to take over. And if they don't take off and this offense isn't humming, you might be seeing a quarterback controversy towards the end of this year, potentially looming, depending on where they stand, because I would have to believe with that out on that contract, they'd love to see what they have in Malik Willis.
Yeah, you got to get out of a $100 million contract for Ryan Tannehill. Like, I think even if Willis isn't the answer, I think you have to get out of that contract, right? Because we've seen what these contracts did to the Falcons. We've seen what they're going to do to Wentz. Like, look at what they've done. I think this league is copycat, but also in contracts, and they see that. I think they got to get out of there. And you're right about him in terms of like his rushing ability. He doesn't have that athleticism anymore. I mean, his highest was 56 yards last year in one game, and after that, 20 yards, maybe, give or take. He has some touchdowns, obviously, because they do use him that way. But that's it. I mean, I think if you have him in Dynasty, you have to start thinking about maybe moving him this year, has a few good games, and we'll look at your rosters and try to turn that over. Let's go to Baltimore. How does Baltimore address the departure of Hollywood Brown? Christian, are you all aboard? You love your boy Rashad Bateman, so I know you're excited right now.
Yeah, I think what it is it's a vote of confidence in him to make that step as the wide receiver one. But I also think they went out, they drafted 2 tight ends this year. And I think one of Charlie Kolar and Isaiah Likely will separate themselves. And I would make the bet that it's Charlie Kolar. I think they want to get back to the 12 and 13 personnel stuff that they ran when Lamar was super successful and an MVP in the league, which would make some sense to me. I also think that they're comfortable with James Prochet taking a bigger role in that offense. He has had some good film over the last few years. He just hasn't been given the opportunity because he plays a similar role to Marquise Brown. I think that they're going to kind of roll with him. If they were going out and getting a free agent, I think Jarvis Landry makes some sense, but I don't know that they feel the need to do that. So it'll be interesting to watch as the offseason continues to unfold.
Yeah, and make sure to scour your dynasty waivers for James Prochet or for Devin Duvernay. I think add those two guys right now because they did not address the wide receiver position in the draft. But you mentioned the two tight ends they brought in, and to me, that signaled to me that they want Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is the clear number one target in this offense. And I think when you're looking towards redraft, I don't know, he might be the number one tight end in redraft because adding those elements that you can have backups to the pass catcher in the offense, that says, I want to flow my offense through a pass catching tight end. And if he goes down, I want somebody that can replace him at somewhat of a level if I'm going to make that commitment to that tight end position being that big of a role in my offense.
Hey, I'm doing the team breakdowns for the Football Guys website, and I'm doing the Ravens. So I've been I've been going over this concepts and everything. I thought Duvernay was a sneaky ad before they got rid of Marquise Brown because they've talked about him and they developed him. He was a Pro Bowl last season as a special teams player. He has that big playability. They've gotten him different ways. If they can scheme him, they might be comfortable. I do think they flirt with some free agents. I think maybe they see who could fit. Landry there. Who knows about Fuller if he's healthy or on steroids again. But if you look at Duvernay, Duvernay could be that big play guy in this offense, and maybe you take a shot at him. But I think it's Mark Andrews, Bateman, J.K. Dobbins. I think that's kind of what you're looking at in this offense here. All right, Hollywood Brown went to Arizona. What do we think about Hollywood Brown there? He wanted more targets. He wanted a better scheme. And then at the caveat is Rondale Moore dynasty value completely gone. How do we feel about that, Christian?
I don't think it is. I said it. That was my initial reaction, is that Rondale is his dynasty value is pretty dead. But the fact of the matter is DeAndre Hopkins is not getting younger. And ultimately, this offense is going to be built through Hollywood Brown and Rondale Moore, I think, because it has to. They also added a very talented tight end in Trey McBride. I think that he's going to be a big part of that offense as well. But I think his fit is simply he's already got the chemistry with Kyler in a college-style offense. That's what they want to run. They want to make Kyler happy. They went out and got one of his best friends. I think that's the fit, and that if you're able to keep your franchise quarterback there because of a move, I think it makes some sense. They're not going to do what Green Bay did to Aaron Rodgers for years and years and years. So.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it was one of those. They're trying to mend bridges with Kyler Murray in that situation, so they add Hollywood Brown, college teammate, and Rondale Moore. They did not add a passing complement to James Conner. And are we sure that Rondale Moore can't kind of serve as that, that Chase Edmonds replacement, or God forbid the Debo role, like that wide back, just like. I don't know, like using him in those different areas of the field, especially in a spread offense that's going to feature 4 wide receivers, or maybe they're going to spread it out, use McBride, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and Rondale Moore in the backfield, motioning in and out, using him on jet sweeps, those kind of college elements. And I think that you're going to see a lot more of that of Rondale Moore in those areas. And so if everybody's waving the white flag on Rondale Moore, and if you have a buy low opportunity in your league, that's a guy, he's still a very talented player, and he still made plays last year on an NFL field. It's just one of those that maybe getting him into a more comfortable role.
Did you just call Rondale Moore the next Debo? Is that what you
I heard that.
You have to put that in your bio now. Now you put that in your bio. 5'7", 180. Rondale Moore is the next Debo from Jeff Bell.
I'm saying in a college spread offense, there are different opportunities for getting a guy the ball in space.
Well, I will say, to your point, though, about Cliff Kingsbury's scheme, it hasn't been great in the NFL. Like, it's been okay, but it's very elementary. And from what we hear about, it's not hard to defend. And I think maybe some of that is catching up to him in this area. But Rondale is a special athlete. We know that. Like, he has that opportunity. I think I'm more worried not a lot about Rondale's talent. I don't think he's the next Debo like Jeff does here. I worry about Kingsbury's ability to scheme him in the right way. I think we saw that scheme over the last year really falter down the stretch. I think Marquise Brown fits it pretty well because he takes that like Antoine Wesley, I believe, kind of role, that deep threat guy, better talent, better area there. And I'm all on board there. All right, really quick, I think we can get to it. How does A.J. Brown fit in Philly's scheme, Christian?
Fantastic. Great yak receiver, gets the ball in his hands quick and can take one to the house. That's exactly what Jalen Hurts needs.
Jeff?
Yeah, I love this fit because, you mentioned exactly. Get in the ball quickly, allow him to create after the catch. We could see much more volume out of A.J. Brown with the Philly because they want to play up that contract, and people are panicked on A.J. Brown, and so that could be a great buying opportunity for you.
AJ Brown's going to limit Jalen Hurts' inaccuracy and his issues and his arm strength, all those things. AJ Brown's going to make him look very good. AJ Brown could do what Debo did for Jimmy G last year. Like he kind of, mirrored that. He can mirror that same inefficiencies and all that stuff. Get him the ball, let him go. I'm sad that he went to Philly, but I think that's a great fit for him. I think that he's going to excel well. All right, we want to jump out of here, but before we do want to talk to you about the 2023 draft class. We definitely are. I'm going to call we're experts in that area. Like, we know a lot of these guys that are coming up. And I think that if you have drafts and you have drafts coming up, you need to know what that 2023 class is. I have an article coming out for Footballguys, which is a 2023 mock, Superflex rookie mock. So you could see in basically 2 rounds what these guys look like. So I'll just let Christian go through. We'll have him do quarterbacks. Jeff will talk about the running backs. I'll do wide receivers, and Christian will go back to tight end. So what are some quarterbacks that we need to know in the 23 class, Christian?
TJ Stroud, Ohio State quarterback, QB1. Bryce Young, QB2. I know Kevin and I will fight about that for the next 12 months. Quarterback from Alabama. Jaren Hall is a name that I think you should probably write down out of BYU. Incredible athlete. We'll talk about him a lot over the next few months. And then Will Levis. There's definitely a differing opinions on Will Levis, and that's another one that Kevin and I will probably fight about over the next few months. But definitely some better names, I think, than what we had this year.
Yeah, so then in the running backs, you've got Bijan Robinson out of Texas, and he already might be a dynasty, maybe even dynasty running back 2 value, realistically. Jahmyr Gibbs, the Alabama running back, transferred from Georgia Tech, and if Jahmyr Gibbs was at Alabama last year, we probably wouldn't even know the name of Brian Robinson as a day 2 draft pick because he's that good. He would have taken the job immediately. Zach Evans transferred from TCU to Ole Miss, and that's another big, strong, explosive back who has the potential to be a day 1 NFL pick, which we obviously didn't even see this year. And then Kendall Milton at Georgia. And so we know that the football factory of Georgia, the running backs at Georgia that we saw both Zamir White and James Cook get drafted, Kendall Milton's going to take over that backfield and be a name to watch this year.
Absolutely. And I think the wide receiver class is my favorite part of this. Jackson Smith-Njigba, probably wide receiver 1 this year, kid out of Ohio State, over 600 yards receiving. He is special talent. In my opinion, he's the 103 in rookie drafts next year, 104. Kayshon Boutte from LSU, coming back from injury, coming back from Brian Kelly being Brian Kelly, but I think he's going to step up and have that yak ability, big kid. Definitely is going to fit that role of those LSU's receivers we're used to, Jamar Chase, etc., Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison, who is now probably been playing for USC, but he made Kenny Pickett look amazing. Anybody that makes Kenny Pickett look amazing, you need to go look at this kid, Jordan Addison, yak guy, young kid, 2 years basically just played receiver because he played quarterback and running back in high school. And then Josh Downs has looked good, over 1,000 yards last year from North Carolina. It's an interesting Devy aspect, but I think he could rise up some draft boards. And then last one, we'll go to tight ends. What do you got, Christian?
Yeah, so Michael Mayer, the kid out of Notre Dame, fantastic route runner, probably better than all the tight ends in this class. And I was a big Trey McBride truther. And then a name that I think you're going to start to hear a lot more on this side of things, Sam Laporta, kid out of Iowa. We know that Iowa is kind of a tight end factory as well. A athletic kid, good route runner, offers nice pass catching ability, which is what you're looking for fantasy football.
All right. Well, hey, that's our show today. I know I can say I'm extremely grateful to be on the Footballguys channel, and Jeff and Christian as well. We hope we brought you value, and the way you look at Dynasty. I think we all have unique perspectives on that. Until next time, if there is a next time, they might shut me out, but I'm Kevin Coleman at @theboys_22.
I'm Christian Williams at CWilliamsNFL.
I'm Jeff Bell at For Whom J Bell Tolls, and this is Footballguys.